This is a 2015 Kia Soul. We've got both the traction control system, TCS, and the anti-lock brake system, ABS, warning lights on the dash. And these have been on for a little while. We've replaced all of the brake pads and all the brake rotors on the car. It has pretty new tires on it, and it handles just fine. It stops when you want it to. You step on the brakes and it stops just fine. But these lights basically are telling us that we don't truly have an anti-lock brake system working, and the traction control system, where the computer controls the wheel speed of the vehicle to improve traction, those systems are not correctly working. So we've kind of got an old school mechanical brake system here where you press on the brakes and it works fine, because we've replaced all those components, but it's strictly mechanical, and it's not the computer controlled ABS and TCS system that are intended. So we want to get this thing working right and get rid of these warning lights and have the vehicle operating safely in slippery conditions and that kind of thing. So the first thing we're going to do here is plug in our OBD scanner. Down here on the left below the steering wheel is the panel to get at that. And we're going to plug in our OBD scanner and see what we've got. Alright, when we plug in the OBD scanner, we get a code of C1206. This scanner actually reads ABS codes. There are some cheaper scanners. I've got one that only read engine codes. You've got to have one of these that reads the ABS codes. And they're usually a little bit more expensive, but probably well worth it. C1206, if you do a quick internet search, that'll tell you that it's the left rear wheel speed sensor that's causing our problem here. So today we're going to run through replacing that left rear wheel speed sensor, and we're going to edit this and try and make it where we just show you the major steps here. This video is going to assume that you know how to turn a wrench and jack up your vehicle and take the tire off and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to skip a lot of the mundane stuff. I'm not going to make you watch every turn of the wrench and watch me back out every single thread. We're going to get to the point here and hopefully help you with the steps that are required to replace the wheel speed sensor on the rear of the 2015 Kia Soul. What I understand is they should be the same on 2014 through 2019 Souls, as well as some other Kia vehicles, and I believe Hyundai's may be the same. I think there's some Hyundai models that actually use interchangeable wheel speed sensor with this. So it may help you with some of those if it looks like you've got the same type of wheel speed sensor and wheel setup on the rear of your vehicle. So let's get on to it. Alright, now that we've got the wheel off and the vehicle up on a jack stand, our next steps are going to be, we've got to remove the brake caliper in order to get at. We're going to have to remove the brake rotor. The wheel speed sensor harness is right here, and it goes into the back of the wheel hub. So we're going to have to get the wheel hub off itself in order to actually get at this thing. As you can see, it's boxed in here, and you're not going to be able to get at it from the back. So you've actually got to take all this apart, remove the caliper, the rotor, and then get at the wheel hub. So we'll show you that. And the brake caliper is held on by these two bolts here that require a 14 millimeter socket to get those off. So there's one up here at the top and one down here at the bottom. Alright, as you get these two bolts loose here, then the caliper should come off, and you just want to support it somehow. Alright, once the caliper's off, we're going to have to get the rotor off of here, and it's got these two screws in it. In my experience, you are not going to get those out any other way, beating on a screwdriver or anything else. You're going to have to use an impact driven screwdriver. So basically you put this in there and hammer on it, and it turns it with some good force. This came from Harbor Freight, was actually pretty cheap, but I pretty much recommend that to get these two screws out, you're going to have to use an impact screwdriver. Alright, once you've used your impact, then you can go ahead and get these screws out. Alright, as I pull these two screws out, my rotor's coming loose. Sometimes, you know, if it's stuck on there with a little bit of rust or something, you may need to smack it a couple times with a hammer or rubber mallet or something like that to get it loose. But mine's coming off pretty easy. Got it? Alright, now that we've got the rotor off, their next step is going to be these 4 bolts right here. And luckily we've got these handy dandy holes on the hub assembly here that allow us to get in there with a socket. Alright, these are 14 millimeter bolts, 14 millimeter socket, and we just kind of go around and line up one of these holes so we can get at the bolts until we get all of this loose. Go. Alright, if you've got an impact, that'll help move things along, but it's pretty much imperative that you have a deep well 14 millimeter socket. If not, you're going to have to get in there with a wrench if you've only got short sockets. Alright, so here again, you get these bolts off and the hub assembly should come off. Kind of like the rotor, if you need to, you may have to hit it a couple times with the rubber mallet in order to get it loose. Mine's coming off. So now we're able to actually see this wheel speed sensor. This shield's going to come off too whenever we remove this. Alright, on the back of this wheel speed sensor, the connector here has this little metal clip. So you're going to want to remove that clip in order to disconnect it, and now your whole assembly is loose. Alright, in my case, I'm wanting to replace this whole ABS wiring harness that goes to that sensor. You may skip this step if you think it's just your sensor that's bad, but since I'm down here dealing with this mess, I'm just going to go ahead and replace this whole harness while I'm at it. So I've got to pull these grommets out, and there's a bolt there that's got to come out to remove it. But then you'll see that it goes up underneath this wheel shroud, and there's a grommet there where it goes in the body. If you're wanting to replace this harness, then you're going to have to go in here to the back seat and the trim panel, and you're going to have to pull this trim panel loose, get around in here, and you'll be able to find right here is where that harness comes through the body and the wheel well. I'm trying to show that. It's basically right down in there, and it's this wire right here. Wishing I could show that better. Maybe there it is. So that's where it comes through, and then it goes up the door frame. So you got to pull all this mess off, and then when you get up here, that's where the connector goes. So it's about even with the door latch is where the other end of the connector is. Alright, so this is the new harness, and we're just going to feed it back in the same way the old one came out. Right here, the grommets just fit right in where the old ones came out. And this is a 10mm bolt that holds this piece in. And then this part, we've just got to feed back through that little hole in the body where we got it, and we're going to go upwards with it. And then there's the little body grommet that goes in. Alright, when we took this off, it's important to note the orientation of this sensor, basically where the connector is. So I'm just going to mark this hub right here. So it came out like this on this side with the sensor connector going oriented that way. So it's important to note that whenever you take this off, so you put it back in right. So what we're doing here is we're prying this old sensor off of here. You know, you're replacing it, so I'm not too concerned about damaging the old sensor too much. But it'd probably take a little bit of effort to get this thing off. There's the sensor off of there. This is the ring that it's basically reading with that little sensor that tells it the wheel speed. And again, we've got our mark here, so we know the proper orientation when we put the old one back on. This is the wheel hub, the bearing assembly. It all comes as one sealed assembly on these vehicles, so if you're needing to replace that, you know, this video probably worked for that too. We've pretty much got to remove and replace this thing. Alright, here's our new wheel speed sensor out of the package. I want to be careful with this one, you know, not damage it. And we're going to put it back on in the same orientation that we got the old one off, and kind of tap it gently back into place. Alright, I'm just using a rubber mallet here so we don't damage anything, and you just kind of have to go around and patiently work this thing back into place until it's mated all the way down around where it seats. Alright, we've got the new sensor on there. It does require a little bit of patience to just get that pounded in there to where it mates up. And you want to make sure it's tight all the way around and you don't have, you know, one side sticking up somewhere when you're done. Okay, so next step is we're going to go ahead and put this thing back in. We want to align this connector. It's got a little slot thing there. We want to align that, get it connected back into the sensor harness, and then get this metal clip back in there that keeps it in place. And there we go. And this is going to be oriented this way, just like we took it out. Alright, we've got the harness all connected back up in place, so we're just going to put that back just like we took it off. We've got our marks there, and same deal, we're going to go all the way around through these holes and put these 4 14mm bolts back in place and get the hub mounted back up. The hub assembly's back in place. All the bolts are tightened up. Next step is going to be to line up these little holes with these and put our rotor back on, and then we're going to reinstall those 2 screws. Alright, we've got our rotor back on, so get our 2 bolts handy here, and we're going to put the calipers back on now.